In this lesson, we're going to create the gloves for our character. Alright, so let's come in and let's start masking off the area for the gloves. So I'm going to bring my draw size down a little bit, and we'll come in and we'll start to mask this off. Okay, so we're going to create some fingerless gloves, made of some common materials, so something like linen or woven wool or something like that, but something very common. And we're just going to make sure that we get this masked off to the proper length of what we want on those fingers. And looking good so far. I just want to make sure that I get a nice straight edge across this. Okay, so something like that. And there we go. Alright, so we've got this. And then what we'll do from here is we'll go ahead and extract this. So I want to make sure that I go up to Subtool and Extract. And let's set our thickness to 0.005 and double turned on, and we'll extract that. That gives us a nice thickness there, but I think that might be a little too thick. Let's do something like 0.003. Extract that. That seems a little better, and I'll hit accept. Now let's go up to our subtools. Let's make sure that we have our gloves selected. Let's hold Control and drag outside on the canvas to turn off the mask, and then we're going to rename this to gloves. And then once that has been renamed, I want to come in and I just want to bump the edges with my smooth brush just to kind of round off the edges of the fingers. Okay. Now once that has been done, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use Noisemaker to create a pattern on the gloves. Let's also do this around the top here. Okay. So with this pattern on the gloves, or with this smoothed out, let's go ahead and go to our surface palette. And actually let's hit Control D 2 times just to divide that, get it nice and smooth. And let's go to Surface, and I'm going to go to Noise. Now, clicking on Noise, you're going to notice that some of my UI is cut off here, but that's okay. What I really need right now is just the noise plugin right here. So I'm going to plug that in, and you can kind of move this around a little bit, and you can see our glove. And this is going to be kind of tricky because these windows don't resize, and I apologize. I'm going to try to get this to a position that we can see very easily. You can kind of see what we've got here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put this on there. It's going to cover it up a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to go to Weave on this. You're going to see that it changes the pattern. Let's take our scale down. Actually, let's take our overall scale down. Let's do something like 0.2 on that. And I don't want to hit Enter on that. Hitting Enter will say OK. It just keeps your changes there. And then we can adjust our scale on this, but let's go ahead and let's see, adjust our scale in the X and in the Y. You'll see that that starts to come together, creating a nice little weave pattern. Now you can adjust, you can go to a herringbone pattern or simple. Herringbone just means it's weaved a little bit more. Simple is just fine for us, but then we want to adjust our width of the horizontal. Okay, take that down a little bit. We'll take this down. You'll see it starts to create this crisscross pattern here. And then we can rotate it on the glove. And we want to rotate it enough to where it gives us a nice pattern on that. And I'm going to try and move this as much as possible over and up, so that way we can see it as much as possible. So that gives us a pretty good pattern for the most part. Adjust the Y angle on that. I think we're okay. And I just want to kind of play around with some of these different lengths here. Now we're going to have to make some adjustments maybe to our scale on these. So we're going to bring those down. See how it gets us this really nice tight pattern here? And if we go down even further, it gets really, really tight. And then we can just adjust the overall scale like this. So we want to keep the scale a little bit larger so we can see what that looks like. Now, I don't really like the shape of that noise, so what we can do is come over here and we can adjust that shape. Now, once we're finished with this, if we're happy with the overall pattern, we'll just simply hit OK. And then what I'll do is I'll come in and make my adjustments. So I'm going to go ahead and flip horizontal. Okay, so what that does is it brings the little the weaves out, and I can start to adjust the overall shape of that. So I can bring that in. Okay, and you can see here how that begins to change how this looks. Okay, so kind of play around with how you want that to look. I think that's pretty good for right now. You can start to adjust things like your offset, and that can start to play around with the overall curvature. We also have our angle that we can play with as well, and then our scale. So we have our X scale and our Y scale. But I have the scale up here as well. That's at global. So we can bring that up. And then you can adjust your strength on how intense that's going to look. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to something like 0.3. And let's do 0.25. Just trying to get this to look nice and neat here. Just our scale. Don't want that to be real intense. Now, if at any time you want to adjust the overall thickness of these patterns, you can always go in and edit this again. Okay, and it's going to bring that up. And so, if you want, you can take your horizontal width on this, and you can start to adjust that. Notice how that changes the stitching and starts to fill in some of that area again. Okay, so now you can see that we're getting this nice weave coming together. So hit OK on that, and then make adjustments to your scale as you need to. And then you can start to play around with the overall shape that this gives you. Okay. All right, so that looks pretty good. Happy with that, kind of the bump that it's giving me there. And you know, from further away we can see it. As we get closer, it makes a little more sense. So we may play with the scale just a little bit more, maybe do 0.5 on that scale. Okay, and that's looking good. Alright, so once you're finished, you'll just simply hit OK at the bottom of that, and then there we go. Now this is not committed to this just yet, so you need to hit Apply to Mesh to actually apply it. But I'm not ready for that yet because I still need to do a little bit of sculpting on the overall gloves themselves. So we can come in and we can start to use our wear and tear brushes again. So I'll load brush, and we'll go to our brushes folder. Now again, these are not in the project files. You can download them with the links that I've given you in the in your text file. Okay. So I'm going to use Wear 10, and it's got this nice little rip here. This is good to use on the edges of the glove. And I'm just going to go ahead and come in and just kind of start to change the overall shape of the ends of the gloves. And while I'm doing this, just really quickly to make sure that you have symmetry turned on. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit X to do that. So the noisemaker worked without symmetry because it's all one object. But I want to start putting these tears in here, really just changing up the ends of the shape, just kind of messing with that silhouette. Okay, And we'll continue to do this all the way around. And it may not look like much, but it really does break it up. Okay. And we'll go ahead and we'll continue. And then we'll add some more of these tears like in the middle of the gloves, but we won't use symmetry on that. Okay. So just a little bit more to go. Okay. Just trying to make sure that this looks like it's been cut off. And at least on those ends. Okay. So there we go. So you can see here it's kind of not quite as smooth as it was before. That's the idea. You may want to do that around the top of the wrist as well. Kind of play with some of the shapes there. Now this probably isn't going to be seen, but just in case, add it in there. Okay, so looking good. Alright, so finally, let's go ahead and turn off symmetry. Use the wear and tear brushes, and just kind of place in maybe some rips and things like that across the gloves. You'll notice here that it went all the way through. I don't want that, so let's go ahead and go to our brush, auto masking, turn off back face mask, or turn it on, and so that way it doesn't go all the way through. So you can create little tears and things like that on your gloves and make them look worn. Okay, do the same thing on this side, okay, because we turned symmetry off. So I'll create a couple of different tears just to kind of set that off. Alright, and then you can come in with something like maybe your standard brush, or even the damn standard brush if you want, and just kind of start to brush in some different wrinkles on your gloves. Okay, so you might get some wrinkles right in here in the middle, where that comes together, maybe right along the fingers. Okay, might have something on the inside here. And notice how it's not affecting the noise. Okay, it's just pushing that up. The noise is basically on top of that. And that's because we haven't committed that noise yet. I'll show you how to do that here in just a moment. Okay, so there we've got that. And then do the same thing on the other side, don't forget it. So bringing in this pattern, just kind of working that in. Okay. And there we go. So you might have a couple of wrinkles here and there on the gloves, might be a little bit different, okay, depending on how that looks. Don't really like that one that I placed there. I like this one here. Alright, so once that is finished, go to your surface properties and just simply hit apply to mesh. So now that is part of the mesh. You can change that up. That has been committed down. I wouldn't commit that down until you're absolutely certain that you're ready. Now one thing that I want you to notice is that whenever you do go ahead and commit that to the mesh, it's going to change based on the subdivision level that you have in that geometry. And so as you can see here, it looks much different. But that was kind of the point. I didn't want it to look exactly like little woven bricks. This detail comes together really well, and it's easy to see from far away as well. Now as you subdivide it, if you subdivide it again, okay, that detail will begin to smooth out. So you want to be very careful with that. So staying with something like this is going to be your best bet. Alright, so once that's finished, let's go ahead and move on into our next lesson where we're going to finish out, or start to finish out, our character.